First Contact. High Hunt Master Zexer stood before the great council of Nexor, his iridescent scales gleaming under the purple light of their 3 suns. The council chambers, with their towering spires made of bones from legendary hunts, seemed to lean in to hear his words. He'd practiced this speech for what felt like decades, though in reality it had only been a few standard rotations. Esteemed council members, he began, trying not to preen too obviously, I bring news of a discovery that will cement our place as the greatest hunters in the known galaxy. He paused for dramatic effect, something he'd learned from watching too many historical hunt documentaries. We have found Earth. The silence that followed was deafening. One of the council members actually yawned, displaying an impressive array of serrated teeth. Elder Crix asked, clearly wondering if she could squeeze in a quick nap before her afternoon hunt, and why should this interest us? Zexer cleared his throat. It's inhabited by a species called humans. They're bipedal, mostly hairless except for these weird patches, and they have absolutely no natural defenses. No claws, no venom, no extra limbs for combat. They're practically begging to be hunted. That got their attention. The council members straightened in their bone thrones, their hunting ridges rising with interest. Our long-range scanners show they spend most of their time in artificial structures, Zexer continued, warming to his subject. They rarely venture into the wild spaces of their world, and when they do, they carry primitive tools for protection. It's almost cute, really, like watching a baby Nexorian trying to hunt with a toy spear. The council chamber erupted in laughter. Elder Crix wiped a tear from her third eye. They sound delightful. Almost too easy, though. Where's the challenge? Zexer clicked his mandibles in what passed for a smirk among his kind. That's the beauty of it. We can use them for training our younglings. Think about it, a safe, controlled environment for first hunts. No more losing promising young hunters to the razor beasts of Crawl or the phantom predators of the void plains. And their defenses? Another council member asked. Surely they have some form of military? Oh yes, Zexer said, trying not to snort. They have these adorable metal vehicles that roll on the ground and flying machines that move slower than a sedated Blorks. Their weapons use chemical propulsion, practically ancient technology. The most advanced thing we've detected is something they call nuclear weapons, which they're apparently too scared to even use. The council members shared knowing looks. Everyone remembered their first encounter with a truly primitive species. It was always good for a laugh at future hunting gatherings. Meanwhile, deep within Cheyenne Mountain Complex on Earth, Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez's fingers flew across her keyboard, bringing up multiple displays. Sir, you're going to want to see this. General Thompson leaned over the lieutenant's shoulder, coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. On the screen, complex energy signatures pulsed in patterns that definitely weren't natural phenomena. Define weird, Lieutenant. The energy signature matches nothing in our database, sir. And it's decelerating. Controlled deceleration at the edge of our solar system. The general's coffee cup never made it to his lips. Get me Commander Chen. Now. Across the base, Commander Mei Chen was already awake despite the ungodly hour. She stood in the training room, watching her team run through their millionth simulation of first contact scenarios. They'd been preparing for this possibility since the classified Pentagon report 3 months ago suggested Earth wasn't as alone as people thought. Her phone buzzed. Chen. Commander, we have a situation. Code Omega. Chen didn't even blink. About damn time. We were starting to get bored down here. 20 minutes later, in the war room, Chen stood before a gathering of Earth's top military brass, in person and via secure video link. The atmosphere was tense, but she noticed more than a few excited grins. They'd been preparing for this moment for years. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, it seems we have visitors. And based on their approach vector and attempt at stealth, they're not here for a diplomatic cup of tea. On the massive screens behind her, satellite imagery showed the heat signature of an object decelerating at the edge of their solar system. Its energy patterns matched nothing in their considerable database of known phenomena. 3 months ago, when our new quantum detection array went online, we picked up traces of advanced technology observing Earth. Since then, we've been tracking their surveillance drones, mapping their observation patterns, and preparing our response. She gestured, and the display changed to show a topographical map of the Rocky Mountains. They think they're being subtle, but their scanning patterns suggest they're looking for hunting grounds. They've focused on remote areas, studied our apparent technological level, and paid particular attention to our military capabilities. A general raised his hand. "You're saying they're hunters?" Chen's smile was sharp. "Exactly. And they think we're prey." She tapped her tablet, and new images appeared on the screen. "For the past 3 months, we've been feeding them exactly what they wanted to see. Carefully crafted false data suggesting we're a primitive species that barely ventures outside our cities. When we do, we appear to rely on basic tools and weapons. We've made ourselves look like perfect targets." The room was silent as the implications sank in. Chen continued, "Operation Honeypot is ready. We've prepared a series of locations that appear to be primitive human settlements or isolated camping spots. Each one is actually a fully equipped tactical response zone, staffed by our best operators and equipped with our most advanced technology. The ones they've been keeping in the black budget," someone muttered, drawing knowing chuckles. "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "Quantum camouflage, nanoswarm weapons, gravity manipulation fields, all the toys R&D has been dying to field test. Our visitors think they're getting a primitive hunting ground. Instead, they're walking into the most sophisticated combat testing facility ever created." General Thompson cleared his throat. "And you're certain they'll take the bait?" Chen's smile widened. "Sir, we've made ourselves look like the perfect training opportunity for young hunters. Easy prey, minimal risk, guaranteed success. They won't be able to resist." She paused, letting her next words sink in. "And when they come, we'll teach them why humans stopped being prey a very, very long time ago." The meeting continued late into the night as final preparations were made. Across the globe, special forces teams moved into position. Advanced weapon systems came online, hidden beneath careful camouflage. And in space, a Nexorian ship continued its approach, its crew completely unaware that they were about to become part of humanity's most elaborate hunting lesson. As dawn approached, Chen stood at the window of her office, watching the stars fade. Her phone buzzed with a message from the quantum detection array. The alien ship had entered the solar system. "Show time," she whispered, reaching for her tactical gear. It was time to prepare a welcome party that their visitors would never forget. The hunt begins. The Nexorian hunting vessel emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, its obsidian hull reflecting the distant sunlight. On the bridge, hunt leader Vixel watched his crew of young hunters practically vibrating with excitement. This would be their first real hunt, and he remembered his own inaugural expedition with fond nostalgia. "Maintain stealth protocols," he ordered, more out of habit than necessity. With their primitive technology, humans probably couldn't detect a solar flare if it hit them in the face. The young hunters checked their equipment one final time, each piece a masterwork of Nexorian engineering designed to give them every advantage over their prey. "Hunt leader," called out Kenner, the youngest of the group, "I've analyzed the local communication frequencies as ordered. Their primary information network is fascinating." He pulled up a holographic display showing various human broadcasts. "They seem obsessed with something called social media and spend hours watching small animals perform amusing actions." Vixel clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Focus on the mission parameters, young one. Remember, this is a training hunt, but we still follow proper protocols." Deep within Cheyenne Mountain, Commander Chen stood in the newly established Alien Response Center, ARC, watching multiple holographic displays tracking the alien vessel's approach. Her team had transformed the formerly austere military facility into something that would make most sci-fi movies look outdated. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had made her perfect for this mission. Lieutenant Rodriguez gestured at one of the displays. "They're following the exact approach vector we predicted, ma'am. Our quantum sensors are picking up their attempts at stealth technology." She smiled. "It's actually pretty impressive, for last century's standards." Chen nodded, studying the tactical overlay. "And our preparations?" "All hunting grounds are prepped and ready," Captain Sarah Mitchell reported from her station. "Strike teams are in position, cloaked and waiting. Environmental manipulators are online, and the quantum interference grid is operating at optimal capacity." She paused, checking another reading. "The aliens won't be able to tell our tech from a campfire until it's too late." The alien vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere under the cover of darkness, its advanced cloaking technology making it invisible to conventional radar. Or so they thought. In reality, every movement was being tracked by quantum sensors disguised as ordinary weather satellites. Hunt Leader, one of the young Nexorians, called out, "I'm detecting multiple small settlements in the designated hunting zone. Primitive structures, minimal technology signature. Perfect for our purposes." Vixel studied the sensor readings with approval. The humans had thoughtfully scattered themselves in small, isolated groups throughout this mountainous region. It would make for excellent hunting practice. What the Nexorians couldn't see was the sophisticated network of sensors, weapons, and defensive systems hidden throughout the primitive hunting grounds. Each seemingly simple cabin was a hardened military installation in disguise. Every hiking trail was monitored by quantum sensors that could track a butterfly's wing beat from orbit. In her command center, Chen watched the alien ship land exactly where they'd wanted it to. "All units, maintain positions. Let them get comfortable." She turned to Dr. Emily Santos, their xenobiologist. "Your analysis." Dr. Santos gestured to her detailed holographic display of the alien vessel. "They're exactly what we expected, apex predators from an evolved hunter society. Their biology suggests incredible natural weapons, but they've become overly reliant on technology. Classic case of evolutionary complacency." "Good," Chen replied. "That's exactly what we were hoping for." The Nexorian hunting party emerged from their ship, their iridescent scales reflecting the moonlight. Each young hunter carried an impressive array of weapons and hunting gear, all designed to give them every advantage over their primitive prey. "Remember," Vixel instructed his charges, "this is a training hunt. We observe first, then select appropriate targets. No unnecessary risks." He activated his sensor suite, scanning the surrounding forest. "These humans have no natural defenses and primitive technology. This should be a perfect introduction to real-world hunting." Hidden in the trees, Special Forces operator Jake Martinez watched through quantum-enhanced optics as the aliens spread out in a standard search pattern. His active camouflage suit made him completely invisible, not just to visual detection but to the entire electromagnetic spectrum. "Control, Sierra 1, he whispered into his neural comm, "targets are deploying exactly as predicted. Permission to initiate Protocol Wonderland?" Chen's voice came back clear in his neural implant. "Granted, Sierra 1. Let's show our guests why assuming technological superiority is a dangerous game." Throughout the forest, hidden systems came online. Quantum field generators began creating subtle distortions in the alien sensor readings. Environmental manipulators started adjusting local conditions in ways too subtle to detect but significant enough to put the hunters on edge. The young Nexorian hunters moved through the forest with what they believed was perfect stealth, their confidence growing with each step. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, and now they would prove themselves as true hunters. "Hunt Leader," Kenner called out softly, "I'm detecting human life signs ahead. A small group, probably camping." He adjusted his sensors. Their heat signatures suggest they're sleeping. Vixel checked his own readings. The scene looked perfect, a small clearing with primitive tents, a dying campfire, and no signs of sophisticated technology. Everything their long-range surveillance had led them to expect from these primitive humans. Perfect, he purred. Spread out, standard containment formation. Remember your training, these humans may be primitive, but they can still be dangerous if cornered. The hunting party moved into position, their movements precise and practiced. None of them noticed the nearly invisible shimmer in the air as adaptive camouflage suits adjusted to their presence, or the silent deployment of nanoswarm weapons platforms disguised as ordinary insects. In her command center, Chen watched the aliens surround what they thought was a vulnerable camping site. All units, prepare for Phase 1. Let's give our visitors their first lesson in human hospitality. The trap was set. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and they didn't even know it yet. As the Nexorians moved in for what they thought would be an easy first hunt, humanity's defenders prepared to demonstrate why underestimating Earth was about to become these aliens' biggest mistake. The first sign that something was wrong came when Kenner's sensor suite began showing impossible readings. Heat signatures appeared and disappeared at random, moving in patterns that defied both physics and logic. The young hunter adjusted his equipment, assuming it was malfunctioning. Hunt leader, he whispered, mandibles clicking nervously, I'm getting some strange readings. The humans, there. He trailed off, unable to make sense of what his instruments were telling him. Vixel was about to respond when the first psychological warfare protocols activated. The forest around them came alive with sounds just at the edge of perception, whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, movements that could be seen only from the corner of the eye. In the command center, Chen allowed herself a small smile. Begin Phase 2. Let's show them what real hunting looks like. The night was about to become very interesting indeed. Tables turn. The night air crackled with tension as the Nexorian hunting party found their carefully laid plans unraveling around them. Vixel's hunting ridges twitched nervously as his sensor suite continued to display increasingly impossible readings. The forest seemed to breathe around them, alive with movement that shouldn't exist. Hunt leader, Kenner whispered, his mandibles clicking rapidly in distress, the human heat signatures, they're multiplying. But that's impossible. The readings suggest they're everywhere and nowhere at once. Vixel was about to dismiss the young hunter's concerns when his own advanced sensor array began displaying similar anomalies. The simple campsite they'd been stalking now showed complex energy signatures that flickered in and out of existence, defying every known law of physics. In her command center, Commander Chen watched the aliens' confusion with satisfaction. Initiate Protocol Phantasm, she ordered. Let's show them what advanced quantum field manipulation really looks like. Throughout the forest, hidden quantum projectors activated, creating overlapping fields of distorted spacetime. To the Nexorian sensors, it appeared as if reality itself was beginning to break down around them. Their supposedly superior technology, rather than giving them an advantage, was now actively working against them. Maintain formation, Vixel ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. These must be atmospheric anomalies. Primitive worlds often have unstable. His words were cut short by a sound that made every scale on his body stand on end, laughter. Not the nervous laughter of prey, but the confident, predatory chuckle of an apex hunter who has just cornered its quarry. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing through the trees in impossible ways. Welcome to Earth, Commander Chen's voice rippled through the forest, carried by precisely calibrated acoustic projectors. We've been expecting you. The Nexorian hunting party instinctively formed a defensive circle, their weapons raised. Vixel's training kicked in as he barked orders, stand firm. They're using simple acoustic tricks too. Simple. The voice came from directly behind him this time. Vixel spun around, but there was nothing there. I think it's time we had a discussion about your definition of simple, Hunt Leader Vixel. The fact that the voice knew his name sent a chill through his thermal regulation system. In the trees above, Lieutenant Sarah Wong adjusted her quantum camouflage suit, completely invisible to both visual and technological detection. She watched through advanced optical systems as the aliens' formation began to break down. Control, the targets are starting to realize they might have miscalculated. Understood, Chen replied through the neural link. All units, proceed to Phase 3. Show them what human hunting technology really looks like. The forest floor beneath the Nexorians' feet suddenly came alive with swarms of what appeared to be ordinary insects. But as Kenner's sensors focused on them, he realized with horror that these were no natural creatures. Each one was a sophisticated nano-drone, capable of everything from data collection to offensive operations. "Hunt leader," he cried out, "these aren't." Before he could finish, every piece of Nexorian technology simultaneously went dark. Their weapons, sensors, and even their basic communication devices simply stopped working. In the total darkness that followed, the forest truly came alive. The quantum camouflage suits worn by Chen's Special Forces teams deactivated in sequence, revealing dozens of heavily armed humans surrounding the hunting party. But these weren't the primitive warriors the Nexorians had expected. Each operator wore armor that made their own hunting gear look primitive by comparison. Commander Chen stepped forward, her quantum armor adapting to match the forest around her, creating the unsettling impression that she was part of the landscape itself. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice now coming directly from her position rather than the surrounding forest. "You seem to have mistaken us for prey." Vixel raised his now useless weapon, more from instinct than any practical purpose. "How? This is impossible. Our scans showed." "Exactly what we wanted them to show," Chen interrupted. "Did you really think a species that survived and thrived on a death world like Earth would be as primitive as we appeared? We've been hunting and being hunted since we first walked upright. It's not just what we do, it's what made us who we are." Around the clearing, more human soldiers appeared, each wearing armor that seemed to bend light and space around them. Their weapons hummed with power that made the Nexorians' hunting gear look like children's toys. "Your long-range scans didn't detect our quantum technology because we didn't want them to," Chen continued. "Those primitive satellites you observed? Decoys. Those simple chemical weapons. A facade. We learned long ago that the best way to handle potential threats was to let them underestimate us." Dr. Emily Santos stepped forward, her xenobiologist's eyes gleaming with professional interest. "Your species evolved as apex predators, didn't you? That's why you never developed true stealth technology. You never needed to hide." She gestured to the forest around them. "We, on the other hand, spent millions of years being prey before we became predators. We learned to hide, to deceive, to turn weakness into strength." Kenner, the young hunter who had been so excited about his first hunt, looked around with new understanding. "The cat videos," he whispered. Chen laughed, a sound that was genuinely amused this time. "Yes, the cat videos. We figured that any species arrogant enough to judge us by our entertainment broadcasts wouldn't look too closely at the quantum fluctuations in our upper atmosphere or the gravitational anomalies around our military installations." The forest floor suddenly lit up with holographic displays, showing the true extent of Earth's defensive systems. Orbital weapons platforms, quantum field generators, and technology that the Nexorians couldn't even begin to comprehend. "Now," Chen said, her voice taking on a more serious tone, "we need to have a discussion about interstellar hunting regulations and proper first contact protocols. But first, I believe you have a call to make to your council. They should know that Earth is not a hunting ground." She smiled, showing teeth in a way that made even the Nexorian predators uncomfortable. "Unless, of course, you'd like to be the prey for a change." Vixel, looking at the ranks of advanced human warriors surrounding his hunting party, made the first wise decision of his expedition. He dropped his weapon. In the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, General Thompson watched the scene unfold through quantum feeds. "Well," he said, taking a sip of his ever-present coffee, "I'd say that's a successful first contact scenario, wouldn't you?" His aide looked up from her tablet. "Sir, what about the rest of their civilization? They might not take kindly to having their hunters captured." Thompson's smile was knowing. "That's exactly why we let them keep their long-range communications functional. Right about now, the Nexorian Council is getting a very interesting transmission about exactly what happens when you mistake humanity for prey." In the forest clearing, Commander Chen was already thinking several steps ahead. This encounter would reshape the galaxy's understanding of humanity, and she intended to make sure that the lesson stuck. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," she called over her neural link, "make sure we're recording all of this. I think it's going to make for an interesting addition to our first contact protocols." As the night wore on, the Nexorian hunters found themselves receiving a crash course in human history, technology, and the complex art of interspecies diplomacy. It was not the lesson they had expected to learn when they set out on their hunting expedition, but it was one they would never forget. The Reckoning. The Great Council Chamber of Nexor had never been so silent. The normally imposing bone-carved thrones seemed to shrink as the holographic transmission played out before them. They watched their elite hunting party, led by one of their most promising hunt leaders, completely outmaneuvered by what they had dismissed as primitive prey. Elder Crix's hunting ridges lay flat against her skull as she watched Commander Chen demonstrating human quantum technology to their captured hunters. The humans' casual manipulation of space-time made their own advanced technology look primitive by comparison. "This is..." she began, then stopped, struggling to find words that wouldn't damage her dignity further. "A catastrophic intelligence failure," offered Council Member Czar, his scales shifting to the dull green of embarrassment. "A diplomatic nightmare? The most significant military miscalculation in Nexorian history?" Back on Earth, in a hastily established joint species conference room deep within Cheyenne Mountain, Commander Chen sat across from Hunt Leader Vixel. The table between them was a masterpiece of human engineering, its surface displaying real-time translations and cultural context markers to facilitate communication. "Let's be clear about something," Chen said, her voice firm but not unkind. "We could have destroyed your ship the moment it entered our solar system. We chose not to, not just because we wanted to understand your intentions, but because we recognized an opportunity." Vixel, his pride wounded but his intelligence intact, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "An opportunity for what, Commander?" "For both our species to learn from this encounter." Chen gestured, and the table's surface filled with historical images. "Humanity's history is written in blood and triumph, Hunt Leader. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways every day. We weren't born apex predators like your people, we had to become them." In orbit above Earth, the Nexorian ship hung suspended in a quantum containment field, its crew now guests rather than hunters. Dr. Emily Santos led a team of xenobiologists through the vessel, their excitement barely contained as they studied Nexorian technology. "It's fascinating," she reported back to General Thompson. "Their tech isn't primitive at all, it's just developed along completely different lines. They focused on overwhelming force rather than stealth because they never needed to hide." The general nodded, watching multiple feeds from around the world as governments struggled to decide how to reveal the existence of alien life to the general public. "And our technology? Completely alien to them," Santos replied with a hint of pride. "They evolved as apex predators, so they never developed the kind of quantum camouflage and deception systems we did. Their sensors are incredible, but they're designed to track prey that's trying to run, not prey that's hunting them back." Meanwhile, in the council chamber on Nexor, a heated debate was underway. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a mix of fear, anger, and, surprisingly, respect. "They let us walk right into their trap," Elder Crix mused, her third eye focused on the tactical analysis of the encounter. "They could have destroyed our hunters at any time, but instead, they chose to teach them a lesson. A lesson about underestimating potential prey," Council Member Czar added. One we should perhaps take to heart. Back in Cheyenne Mountain, Chen was showing Vixel and his young hunters through what she called a basic training facility. The Nexorians watched in amazement as human soldiers practiced with quantum phase rifles, their armor systems adapting in real time to any threat. Your people focused on developing better natural weapons, Chen explained, pointing to a soldier demonstrating active camouflage. We focused on becoming whatever we needed to be to survive. Predator, prey, invisible, overwhelming, we learned to be all of these things. Kenner, the young hunter who had been so excited about his first hunt, watched the demonstrations with newfound appreciation. Is this why you let us see all those cat videos? To make us think you were soft? Chen laughed. Partially. But mostly because we really do love cat videos. Being a technological powerhouse doesn't mean you can't appreciate the simple things in life. In Washington, D.C., the president sat in the Situation Room, watching feeds from multiple first contact sites around the globe. Similar scenes were playing out in capitals worldwide as humanity prepared to step onto the galactic stage. So what are our options? She asked her advisors. The Secretary of Defense cleared his throat. The Nexorians are actually approaching this with remarkable grace, all things considered. They're warriors at heart, they respect strength and cunning. By demonstrating both, we've earned their attention. And their fear, added the Secretary of State. No, Chen's voice came through the quantum link. Not fear. Understanding. They're predators, yes, but they're not stupid. We just showed them that the galaxy is more complex than they imagined. That's not a bad foundation for diplomatic relations. On Nexor, the council had reached a decision. Elder Crick stood, her hunting ridges now raised in a position of formal respect. Send word to Earth. The Nexorian Empire wishes to establish proper diplomatic relations with humanity. And... She paused, mandibles clicking in what their cultural experts would later identify as wry amusement. We would be very interested in learning more about their quantum technology. In orbit, aboard the International Space Station, astronaut Sarah Chen, no relation to the commander, watched the Nexorian ship through the cupola window. Hard to believe, she said to her Russian colleague, just a week ago, we thought we were alone in the universe. And now, he asked. Now we know we're not alone, she replied, and we've made quite an entrance onto the galactic stage. Back in the mountain facility, Commander Chen was putting the finishing touches on her report when General Thompson stopped by her office. You know, he said, settling into a chair with his ever-present coffee, when we first detected their surveillance, most of my colleagues wanted to shoot first and ask questions later. Chen nodded, remembering those tense early meetings. But you supported my plan to let them come to us. Because you understood something fundamental about both species, Thompson said. Sometimes the best way to prevent a war is to demonstrate exactly why starting one would be a terrible idea. As night fell over the Rocky Mountains, two groups of warriors, human and Nexorian, sat around what appeared to be a traditional campfire but was actually a contained plasma field. They shared stories of hunts and battles, each gaining a new respect for the other's strengths. You know, Vixel said to Chen as they watched their teams interact, when we first detected Earth, we thought we had found the perfect training ground. You did, Chen replied with a smile. Just not in the way you expected. New Dawn. 6 months after the failed hunting expedition to Earth, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Great Hall of Nexor, once decorated solely with trophies from legendary hunts, now featured a new addition, a deactivated human quantum camouflage suit, displayed prominently as a reminder of the day everything changed. High Hunt Master Zexer stood before the council once again, but this time his posture was different. Gone was the preening confidence, replaced by a thoughtful demeanor that better suited his position. The human diplomatic delegation arrives tomorrow, he announced to the assembled council. They've agreed to help establish the joint species training initiative we proposed. Elder Crix nodded, her hunting ridges shifting in what had become known as the human lesson position. And our young hunters? How are they adapting to the new training protocols? Surprisingly well, Zexer replied, activating a holographic display. Once they got over the shock of being outmaneuvered by their supposed prey, they became fascinated by human tactical thinking. The concept of using deception and misdirection as primary hunting tools rather than last resorts has revolutionized our training programs. On Earth, Commander Chen stood in the newly constructed Interstellar Defense Academy, watching as human and Nexorian instructors ran joint training exercises. The facility, built into the Rocky Mountains not far from where the original encounter took place, represented everything that had been achieved in the past 6 months. "It's still hard to believe," Lieutenant Rodriguez said, joining her at the observation window. 6 months ago, we were preparing to defend Earth against alien hunters. Now we're teaching them our tactics. Chen smiled, watching a young Nexorian hunter successfully use a simplified version of human quantum camouflage technology. The best way to prevent a war is to make your potential enemies into allies. Besides, she added with a hint of amusement, they're teaching us quite a bit as well. In orbit, the first joint human-Nexorian space station was nearing completion. Its design combined Nexorian durability with human adaptability, creating something entirely new. Dr. Emily Santos had practically moved in, her xenobiology team working alongside Nexorian scientists to understand how their different evolutionary paths had led to such divergent approaches to technology and survival. The really fascinating thing, she explained during a Quantum Link conference with both species leadership, is how our different origins as predator and prey species influenced not just our biology, but our entire approach to technology and warfare. The Nexorians developed technology to enhance their natural advantages, while we developed technology to compensate for our natural disadvantages. Back in the training facility, Hunt leader Vixel, now serving as the chief liaison between human and Nexorian forces, watched as his former hunting party demonstrated their new skills. Young Kenner, once naive about human capabilities, now moved with a blend of Nexorian power and human subtlety. "They're calling it hybrid hunting," Vixel explained to a visiting delegation from both worlds. "Combining our natural predatory instincts with human strategic deception. The results have been impressive. Impressive enough to make us reconsider some fundamental aspects of our society," added Council Member Czar, who had traveled from Nexor to observe the training. "We've always prided ourselves on being apex predators, but the humans showed us something important. True strength lies not in being the most powerful, but in being the most adaptable." In Washington, D.C., the President stood before a joint session of Congress, making history with the first public address about the Nexorian alliance. 6 months ago, Earth faced what could have been its greatest challenge, she began. Instead, thanks to careful planning, technological advancement, and the wisdom to show strength through restraint, we've gained our first true allies in the galaxy. The Joint Species Training Initiative is just the beginning. Already, our combined scientific teams are making breakthroughs in quantum physics, biotechnology, and space exploration. Across the globe, humanity was adapting to the reality of not just alien life, but alien partnership. The initial fear and panic that many had expected never materialized. Instead, people were fascinated by their new alien allies, particularly once they learned that the Nexorians had been equally impressed by cat videos and human cooking shows. In the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, now expanded into the primary Earth-Nexor coordination facility, General Thompson sat with Commander Chen, reviewing reports from various joint projects. "You know," he said, setting down his coffee cup, "when you first proposed letting them come to us instead of shooting them down, I thought you were taking an unnecessary risk." Chen nodded, remembering those tense early planning sessions. Sometimes the best way to change someone's perspective is to let them learn the lesson themselves. The Nexorians aren't our enemies, they were just working with an incomplete understanding of the galaxy. And now they understand that being an apex predator doesn't mean you stop evolving. Their society is changing, adapting. Just like we did. In the training facility's mess hall, human and Nexorian warriors shared meals and stories. The initial awkwardness had given way to genuine camaraderie. Young Nexorian hunters learned about human history and tactics, while human soldiers studied Nexorian hunting techniques and cultural traditions. The really interesting thing, Kenner said to a group of human trainees, is how your species turned your evolutionary history as prey into an advantage. You developed stealth and deception not because you wanted to hide, but because you wanted to survive. And then you turned those survival tools into weapons. A human trainee nodded. And you developed strength and direct confrontation because you never needed to hide. Different paths to the same destination, survival. On Nexor, the changes were even more profound. The traditionally conservative society was experiencing a renaissance of sorts, as centuries of cultural assumptions about strength and hunting were being re-evaluated. The council had even begun discussing the possibility of establishing a permanent human embassy. We thought we were the galaxy's greatest hunters, Elder Crix reflected during a private meeting with Commander Chen, who had traveled to Nexor as Earth's military attaché. But you showed us that true hunting isn't just about being the strongest or having the best weapons. It's about understanding your prey, adapting to circumstances, and knowing when not to strike. And you showed us that strength doesn't have to be hidden, Chen replied. Our history made us cautious, perhaps too cautious. Working together, we can balance each other's extremes. As the sun set over the Rocky Mountains, casting long shadows across the training grounds, Commander Chen stood with Hunt Leader Vixel at the exact spot where they had first confronted each other 6 months ago. Do you ever wonder, Vixel asked, what would have happened if we had come in shooting instead of trying to hunt? Chen nodded. Often. But I think both our species learned something valuable that night. You learned that appearances can be deceiving, and we learned that sometimes the best way to make a friend is to show them exactly why they shouldn't make you an enemy. Above them, the stars were coming out, no longer representing an empty void but a galaxy full of possibilities. A shooting star streaked across the sky, actually a joint human Nexorian patrol ship testing new hybrid technology. To think, Vixel mused, all of this started because we thought we'd found an easy hunting ground. You did find a hunting ground, Chen replied with a smile. Just not in the way you expected. Instead of finding prey, you found partners. As night fell over Earth, both species looked to the future with new understanding. The galaxy was a bigger, more complex place than either had imagined, but together, they were better equipped to face whatever challenges it might hold. The Great Hunt, as the first contact incident came to be known, marked not the end of an era but the beginning of one. In trying to find easy prey, the Nexorians had instead found equals. In preparing to defend itself, humanity had found allies. And in learning from each other, both species had found something even more valuable, a future brighter than either could have achieved alone. The end.